Welcome back, guys. Before we went to break, Robert was explaining what the OSS, and then he went in deeper so you understood what the Jedburghs were, and, you know, their origins a little bit. And I'm going to let him finish up with the Jedburghs, and then, Robert, if you could, after you finish up with the Jedburghs, I'd like to ask you, what do you think was the motive for killing Patton? Like, what would be the motive to kill a general that high-ranking in the U.S. military that was that beloved and very well known?
It's a great question, and I'd like to address that. And I'll go back just in this Jedburgh thing. Even before that, I want to say that if anybody wants to see my books, they can get them at www.robertkwilcox. That's my website, robertkwilcox.com. Or you can go to Amazon. I've got 10 books that I've authored, and I'd love for anyone to see them at the website. Now, the point of the Jedburghs was this tough group of guys were organized to jump behind enemy lines, and really their first big operation was to jump behind the Nazi lines in France in prior and during the D-Day landings, so that they would be harassing, and they were to organize the Maquis, which was the Free French that were fighting the occupation of France during World War II. They were, real ragtag and didn't know what to do. Well, you drop these guys in who are great fighters and great organizers and so on, and they organized, and they did. They harassed the Germans who were trying to come up and fight at D-Day, and really had a great part. Eisenhower made a special thing about how they really helped tremendously. And Bozzato was one of the key Jedburghs. And that's very key for me, because this guy is a sterling type of witness. And as we'll get into this, Bozzato said he set up the accident that killed Patton, that eventually killed Patton. Now, to go back to the motive thing, because I think that's important to get into first, why would anyone want to kill our greatest general, our greatest fighting general, certainly of World War II? And he was. He really, without Patton, we very well may not have won that war. Those are strong words, and I'll back them up in a second. Patton literally kicked the Germans out of France. It was Patton who did that. But by the end of the war, and Patton is that kind of guy that, everybody knows a guy like this. He's tough as nails, and you'll love to have him in a bar fight or anything else. But then when you're home, with the girls and everything, hey, sit in the background, or it makes you a little nervous. So Patton was the guy that they had that would just go out there and wreak havoc. But by the end of the war, and, I overdid that a little bit, because Patton was also a brilliant man who studied hard. And one of the reasons he was so good is he was always so prepared. I mean, he would dig into ancient texts and find where the water holes were, and where the old Hannibal had won a war, and he'd realize why. He was really, really terrific. But when the war was ended and they'd used him, they kind of they didn't kind of. They first established him as one of the leaders who were administering our occupation, but he was real, would do the right thing. He hated the Nazis, but he realized that not every person in Germany was a Nazi, and especially the mayor of the town who knew how to get rid of the garbage and everything. So he had a few Nazis a few Germans who he would never take a hardcore, rotten Nazi, never. But some of the Germans he left in place, and this really made the very, very left-wing Democratic hierarchy that was running our country at the time, FDR at the top, mad. And so they fired him, and they put him away into a backwater. And he was getting angrier and angrier. The biggest thing that made him angry was that he saw what the Russians were doing. He saw that they were taking over Eastern Europe. FDR and the Democratic administration thought that Stalin was some kind of great man and they desperately wanted him to be elevated, and he took advantage of us, and really we gave him Eastern Europe, and this infuriated Patton. Patton wouldn't stop. They told him to shut up, but he said, look, we have fought the greatest fight here. We were supposed to liberate these people from a great, great evil, and we did, and we gave them a worse evil. So he is sitting there seething, and he's about ready to go home. And he's decided he's going to leave the Army. He's independently wealthy. He doesn't need the money that the pension will give him and everything. He's independently wealthy. He married a very rich woman, and they had a big home in Boston and so on. He was going to leave, and he was going he may very well have run for president. At the time, he was like number 4 on the popularity list in America. He was a big deal. But regardless of that, and there's a controversy of whether he would have ever run for anything, he was going to write his memoirs and tell the story. And the memoirs that he had would have shown that over and over, Eisenhower, who was a diplomat and not a soldier, he was a terrible plotter of how to do these things. Over and over, they stopped Patton. Patton, when he when he ran through France, he literally had the Germans at Falaise, and that's a famous place. It's not so famous today because they've kind of covered it up. But Patton could have annihilated most of the German, the crack troops that were in France at Falaise. But Eisenhower wouldn't let him do it. And he wanted Montgomery to come there. And, of course, Montgomery was this plodding, slow, bad general who would not close the gap at Falaise. And so a lot of Germans streamed out of that gap there and went on, and they came back and hit us at the Battle of the Bulge, which I'll get to in a second. But Patton was going to tell secrets like that. He was going to tell how that had happened. And this would, of course, it would have looked very bad for Eisenhower. And I doubt that if all the secrets that he was going to tell were told, that Eisenhower would have ever been elected, because he was a very bad general. He didn't do the right things.
If Eisenhower's true colors got shown, Robert, I don't think he would have been elected.
I agree with that.
And I think you even expanded in your book how just by what Montgomery did, that actually extended the war by almost a year.
Well, that is probably the most important thing. When Patton chased the Germans even after they got out of Falaise, he chased them right to the German border, and he was ready to go in. And the German generals will tell you that they were scared to death, they were running amok, and the war could have been ended probably around October or even earlier, September. This is when this happened in 1944. And yet Eisenhower said no. There was a literal stop Patton agenda going on. Posada was part of it. He will tell you about this. And they stole his gas, and they wouldn't let him advance. And what Eisenhower wanted to do is he went along with Montgomery's plan, which was the bridge too far.
And I'm going to cut you off right there, Robert. I'm going to pick up the bridge too far when we come back on the other side of this break. Stay tuned, guys, because you are hearing hidden history of World War II and the reason why they would kill a good man like General Patton. Stay tuned.
Kill my entire family, murdered and tortured, raped and pillaged. I was only 5 and I was the only surviving witness. My entire village burned to the ground. He wore a serpent in his crown. Happily committed murder with a frown. And an army of black hooded fiery skull generals and a sorcerer that could cast spells that'll change